Welcome everyone. Hi, I'm Gusdorff from Bethel Congregation in Phoenix, Arizona. And some of you have cooked with me before and some of you are new. Welcome to those who are new and welcome back to those who have watched this YouTube before. Today we are going to be making apple strudel, easy apple strudel, and we're also going to be making a white sangria also with apples. So I hope that you will enjoy watching and then perhaps making them yourself. So why apple strudel? Why white sangria with apples? Well, the Jewish holiday of Tu BShevat is coming up in about 2 weeks. It'll be observed on Sunday night, January 16th. I had to stop and think at sundown until Monday evening at sundown on January 17th. And what is this holiday of Tu BShevat? Tu BShevat is not spelled T-O-O or T-O or T-W-O. It's from the letters Tet Vav, which in Hebrew have the numerical value of 15. And BShevat, the B is in, and Shevat is the name of the month. So it's the 15th day of the month of Shevat. Originally, when Tu BShevat was observed, it was the New Year of the Tree, Jewish Arbor Day. And gradually over the years, the holiday has has evolved into planting trees in Israel. It's an honor to do that in honor of or in memory of a loved one or friends. It marks the emergence of spring in Israel. And lately it's become an ecological awareness day, a Jewish Arbor Day perhaps, and a day where we take care of the earth. So enough said about what Tu BShevat means. You can Google it and get some more resources on how we observe Tu BShevat. And today we are going to be making apple strudel and white sangria with apples because the apples grow on trees. And then the other fruits that we're going to be including in our sangria are also grown on trees. We're using cherries and we're using peaches. So let's get started with the apple strudel. So you have seen the recipe on the beginning of the YouTube, and what you can do is you can pause and you can make a copy of it. You can make a screenshot of it, and then we'll be showing you the recipe again at the end of the video. So let's get started. And the first thing that we're going to do is turn the oven to 375. I've already done that. And the next thing I did was I have 1 egg that's beaten with water, about a tablespoon of water, and I've got my pastry brush here, and I'm going to leave them on the side until we need them. And then I've got the granulated sugar and the flour with 1 teaspoon of cinnamon mixed together, and I'm going to be adding them to the apples that I'm going to be putting into the bowl. So I've got a small bowl, and I've got, apples cut up. It calls for 2 apples, and I've got 1 apple cut up. And you can see I'm using my bench scraper to get them in. Usually I don't use the bench scraper this way, but I just thought it would be easier to do it. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here to my cutting board. Oh, there's 1 apple remaining. And I am going to cut the apple. One of the things I like to do after I peel it when I'm slicing an apple is I like to go down on one side and then flip it around to the other side and do that. So now I have 2 larger size pieces, and now I'm going to go down and end up with 2 smaller pieces. And I can see that I need to cut this off, and also I'm going to go in there and just section out this little bit of the inside. This is from the apple core, and it's not going to be very tasty if I left it inside there. So let me just section it out, and it should come out. There we go. And I'll put this over here. All right. Oops. All right, now I'm going to keep count because I know already about how many pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to stop there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I know that if I have 6 on one side, I should have about 6 on the other. This one should probably give me about 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's kind of like a template. You know that what you got on one side is what you should have on the other. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. All right, now I want you to see what I usually do with the bench scraper. It picks up very, very nicely. Rather than using the knife, which is sharp, I would recommend using something called a bench scraper, because even though it is sharp, it's not as sharp as the knife. And it just makes cleanup and picking up things a lot easier. So here I've got 2 Granny Smith apples that have been cored, peeled, and sliced thin. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of sugar. I'm going to stir them around. All right. And then I've got flour and cinnamon. Mix them together. And I'm going to sprinkle that over the apples also. The sugar will give it sweetness. The cinnamon will give it a little bit of a kick, a little bit of a flavor. And the flour is to keep the apples from giving off their juices and making the strudel dough soggy. All right, so now that they're combined, I'm going to add a very generous 2 tablespoons of raisins. The recipe calls for 2 tablespoons, but having made it before, I can tell you that this recipe will handle a very generous 2 tablespoons worth. And I used blonde raisins. I think that they just blend in with the whole color scheme. If you don't have blonde raisins, you certainly can use the dark raisins. No problem with that at all. I just want to give you a little back history on making strudel. My mother was a kosher caterer in Philadelphia, and she had in her catering kitchen a huge, I guess it was about the same size as the island where I'm standing now, a huge butcher block table. And she would lay a tablecloth down, and in her industrial size mixer, she would make the dough for her apple strudel and for her knishes. And that dough she would stretch so thin over the top of this butcher block table that you could actually see through it. It was transparent. I was in awe of how she did that, and I never made apple strudel because I didn't have the ingredients, the quantity, the recipe, any of that, nor did I have the desire to be able to do something like that because that was catering size. After I discovered this recipe, I have now enjoyed making apple strudel. And I think that my mother, if she were here, would say, it's not quite as good as hers, but it would do. And I think that you would enjoy it. You'll enjoy it as well. All right, so I'm gonna put these aside, and the sugar and the cinnamon and the flour will work their wonders, and they'll thicken the apples a little, and I'm gonna put that aside. So let me get my glasses back on so I can see what's next. And, all right, I've got 2 tablespoons of flour here, and I'm going to sprinkle it generously. I think there's a little bit of apple. I'm going to get that off. And this is where the magic begins. This is your dough. This is puff pastry dough. Before I lay it down, I'm going to roll the rolling pin in the flour because I want it to be coated with flour so it won't stick. All right, and I'm going to take my ring off. If I need more flour, I have more here. And I'm going to roll this, and this is going to take a few minutes to do, to a 12 by 16 inch rectangle. It's cold, which is what it should be, but you definitely don't want it to be frozen. So you have to take your puff pastry dough out of the freezer a good 40 minutes beforehand. And this is so cold. All right, let me turn it around. It's working. I have used a ruler to measure the 12 by 16 inches to make sure that I'm getting the right size. But when I get to that point, I will go get the ruler. I'm going to give it a little stretch. It is definitely very, very cold, and that is why it is not rolling as quickly as I would like, but you do need to have it get cold. And you do need to have it be cold, because if it gets too warm, it gets very, very sticky. I have used puff pastry dough to make salmon, where you put the salmon inside, maybe a little pesto on top of the salmon, wrap it up in the puff pastry dough and bake it that way. So there are a lot of different things that you can do other than just making apple strudel. And if you Google recipes with puff pastry dough, I'm sure that you can use your creativity and come up with some other ideas. You really want to keep this even. Whatever you do on one side, you want to do on the other. And you can see that it is stretching. It definitely is stretching now. And we're going to have the shorter end, which is this end, is what I'm going to keep, turn it around when we go to fill the strudel, because we fill it on the shorter end. Okay, so I will be getting a ruler shortly. We're not at that point yet. And you can see I did not use the whole 2 tablespoons of flour, just in case. You know, you never know if it's going to be a humid day, if you're going to need to have flour because the dough is sticky. You come back towards me. If your dough should rip, just take a little bit of water and place it on top and smooth it, and your dough will come back again into one piece. All right, let me see how close I am at this point. Here's my ruler. All right, this way I'm 12 inches. This way I am 12 and 2, 14. We're almost there. Whoops. All right, let's lengthen it a little bit. Get those extra 2 inches in there. You can see the dough keeps creeping back. It wants to go back to its shape that it was before I rolled it. All right, I think we might just about be there. Let's see. 12. Okay, we're there. All right. So I'm going to turn the dough around. And because it's nice and floured, it won't stick. There we go. I want to roll this one out a little bit. I want the edges to be even all the way up, as even as they can be. All right, now, let's take another look. The apples, nice and wet, nice and moist. The sugar has worked its magic. The cinnamon has mixed in. All right, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the apples and I'm going to keep a 1-inch border on the sides and at the bottom, and I'm gonna go halfway up the dough. I can smooth it out and move it around once I place it on the dough. All right, just to make sure I get every bit of this out. All right. And now it's all lumped up, so let's see what we can do here. We want to keep about a 1-inch border. And you can even use your fingers. Okay, this is about halfway. Okay, pretty good. Let me just move this up here a little bit. All right. Now comes the wrapping of the dough. So you're gonna take this and pull it towards you a little bit and pull it up. And you're just gonna fold, 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 and roll, roll, roll. All right, that's pretty simple, isn't it? Keep going, keep going. Okay, and there you have your log of dough. Let me just wipe my hands off because I don't want them to be wet for this next step. So what you're gonna do is give a little pinch at the end and you're gonna tuck it under. You don't want any of that deliciousness coming out, all right? And then the other end, I can see there's a little bit of apple peeking out. So I'm gonna push it gently back in. And again, I'm gonna do the same thing. Oh, here's a raisin. I'm gonna stick it back in. And I'm going to fold it under. All right. This end's not cooperating as well, but it's okay. Okay. Now, there is your apple strudel. That wasn't so hard, was it? Now let's see what it says to do next. It says tuck the ends under to seal, which we did. Brush the pastry, top and sides, with the egg mixture. All right, here's our egg mixture. So I'm going to very, very liberally use my pastry brush. And if you've watched me before, I've told you that if you do not have a pastry brush, you can take a paper towel, crumple it up, and dip it into the egg mixture. I happen to think that having a pastry brush would be a little bit easier, and it's something that I do use on a fairly regular basis, so it was a good investment. You do not want to pick it up and put the egg underneath. You do not need scrambled egg underneath your apple strudel, but you do want to do all the sides. You can see I'm going around and I'm getting every one of the sides. All right. Now, we've done that. It says sprinkle with coarse sugar. Okay. Here's my coarse sugar. This is turbinado sugar, Hawaiian sugar, whatever you wish to call it. And I'm very liberally going to sprinkle the top, which means that I'll probably use about 5 or 6 packages. I guarantee you, you are not making this too sweet. This apple strudel can stand up to this coarse sugar being sprinkled on top. Now, also what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lift this up and I'm gonna sprinkle the sides because you've already put the egg mixture on there. So it's like a glue. So when you sprinkle the sugar on there, it'll stick. And I think what I'll do is I'll turn it around again so you can see what I'm doing on the other side. Yes, I know I've used several packages. It's not too much. You're not eating the whole log at once. I'm just going to tip this up just a wee bit more over here. All right. Now let's see what the next direction says. It says, cut about 10 deep slits in the top of the pastry. Okay, here's my knife. And I'm going to start over here. You know what? I still have a ruler. This is about 1 inch. Okay, so there's 1 slit. Here's 2. I can feel there's a little bit of resistance because you've got the apples there that you're cutting through. You're not going all the way down to the bottom. You don't want the juice leaking out onto the baking sheet or the parchment paper. And once this cools, then you can cut them through the slits. And I'll even make a little one over here. Now I'm gonna turn this around because I'm not sure that I cut it far enough through. So I wanna go down a little bit more on this side. And it's the beauty of being able to turn your sheet around. Okay, there we go. And now what I'm gonna do is I am going to transfer this to the parchment paper and the baking sheet. Now I'm going to angle it because my baking sheet is not long enough. So very carefully, I'm going to lift this up, lay it across here. Wipe my fingers. Okay, this is fine. And our apple strudel is about to go into the oven, and you'll see what it looks like when it's all done. All right, let's put it in the oven now. Okay, so welcome back. We are now going to make the white sangria with the tree fruit in it. And as you can see, I've already added peaches and I've added cherries. Just so you know, it's not peach or cherry season in Arizona right now. So I did buy frozen. And the nice thing about having frozen fruit in your drink is it will keep your drink cold without adding ice cubes to dilute it. Now, I want to talk to you about apples. The apples that we used in the strudel were Granny Smith apple. That's my go-to apple when I'm baking. For eating out of hand, I prefer Honeycrisp apples. And when it comes to making this, we're going to be using the Honeycrisp apples. When I'm making applesauce, I use Fuji apples. So those are my three go-to apples. So let's go. You start with the Honeycrisp apple, which we're going to add to this fruit mixture. And if you remember before, I said I like to cut them so that we have the big side. And then I like to go around and get the smaller sides cut. Okay, work with me, your knife, there we go. Okay. So I think before, if I'm not mistaken, I got about 5 on the side. I hear my oven going off. Let's take a look at the apple strudel. Interrupting our drink making. What do you think? Looks good enough to eat. All right, I'm going to put it on the cooling rack and let it sit there. Okay, turn off the oven. All right. Let me wash my hands. Okay, now back to our apples. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5. All right, and let's do the big side. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 and 10. And we should be able to get 10 slices out of this one easily. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And remember I talked to you before about the bench scraper, using that rather than the knife. This can actually be made a day ahead of time. And I'll tell you what you would do if you're going to make it a day ahead of time. I am using sparkling apple cider. So it's going to give it a little fizz, but it's got that nice apple flavor to it. If you make it a day ahead of time, you're going to lose part of the fizz. So if you are going to do that, what you can do is you can use a fruit juice so that there is no fizz in there, and this will just macerate in the juice. Macerate is a lovely cooking term, and it just simply means that you are soaking your fruit in a liquid so that the flavors will be enhanced. I'm also going to add a Prosecco to this, which is going to give it more fizz. So if you were going to make this a day ahead of time, and you're going to use an alcoholic beverage that has fizz to it, I would say hold off on adding the fizz part, the carbonated beverage, until you're ready to serve it, and then add the carbonation. As long as the fruit soaks in a fruit juice or a liquid that might have a carbonation to it, but you don't mind losing the carbonation, then it's fine to make it ahead of time. If you're going to make a white sangria, and it just happens to be my favorite rather than a red, there are lots and lots of different options for you to use. I know that there are many recipes out there for you to use when you're making a sangria, but I don't think that there's really any hard and fast rule about what you want to put into it. It's your own personal taste. It's your flavors that you prefer. You can use a white grape juice. You can use an apple juice. You can use a pear nectar or a mango nectar. That would be lovely in making a white sangria. If you want to use red, you always have those options of the cranberry juice cocktails. They come in lots of different flavors. And there's cherry juice out there that you can use. It's whatever you prefer, whatever your choice is. And there, I've added 2 small bottles. And you can see the fruit is in layers. Now, what you would want to do is you would want to get the fruit out of there. So you would want to use a small tongs. Nobody's looking. And it's your own personal bottle. Use your fingers. I don't know how well that would work, but you can do that. Let me just see about getting tongs. To show a very nice presentation. Let's zero in on these glasses. Can you see the changing colors? Aren't they fun? If you use a narrow champagne type flute for this and you have carbonation in there, it will take longer for the carbonation to disappear from your glass. If you use a wide wine glass, the carbonation will go faster. So that's why frequently champagne, Prosecco are served in tall, narrow flutes like this. So I'm going to put 1 and 1. Now, I must say, I did a lovely job layering the fruit, so I do have the fruit buried underneath there. Here's a peach slice. Here's another peach slice. And I see there are some cherries. I know that when I order a white sangria at a restaurant, I'm always interested in seeing what fruits they put in there. And a lot of times I'm disappointed because sometimes it'll come with a lemon slice and a lime slice, and that's it. And that's not using creativity. I really enjoy having restaurants serve their sangria with some interesting fruits, and some of them will put raspberries in there, grapes. I happen to think that looks delicious and elegant, and I can still see the lights changing in the bottom. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand one to my videographer, and I am going to take one. Cheers to the new year. Happy 2022.
Good.
Delicious. All right, let's take a little break. I will be right back, and I'm going to set up the tablescape so you can see how delicious everything looks. Okay, so here you can see we've sliced up the apple strudel. And for those of you that were wondering, why did I put the deep cuts into the apple strudel? Was it to let the steam escape? Was it to keep it from exploding while it was in the oven? Yes, but it was also to make it very, very easy so that it can be cut and sliced in a very easy fashion after it's cooled. So you can see the finished product. It's super easy, super delicious, and extremely delicious. And all that sugar that we put on the top really adds a nice little extra crunch. And you can see that it is loaded with apples. I'm gonna turn it around. You can see it's really loaded with the apples and the raisins. And I think using the blonde raisins really is a nice touch. And if you look over here, you can see the beautiful white sangria that we made with the apple slices, with the cherries, and with the peaches in them. And use your imagination if you'd like to make a red or a white sangria. Use your imagination for what your favorite fruits are, for your favorite juices. And let's have one last look at the recipe. And you can pause your YouTube and you can take a screenshot of it. And I hope that this is a recipe that you will try because it really is delicious and really easy to make. Happy BShevat, happy 2022 to everyone.